ओम नमो नारायणाय रिवेर महाराज जय श्री रामकृष्ण
Om Namo Narayana.
ओम महाराज थैंक यू
स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of Great Master Sri Ramakrishna. Yesterday we all came to know about the place of grace of God. What's the importance of grace of God? So the conclusion was Turiyanandaji Maharaj, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, said that teaching of Sri Ramakrishna has forever been imprinted on my mind. I have known from that day that nothing can be achieved without the grace of God. Nothing can be achieved without the grace of God. We cannot refrain from mentioning here another fact about the depth of Master's non-dual knowledge. When there was a crisis in Sri Ramakrishna's illness at Kashipu, Sri Shashadara Tarka Chudamani, Shashadara Tarka Chudamani heard of it and came with a few others to see Sri Ramakrishna. He told Sri Ramakrishna, "Sir," said the Pandit to the master in course of conversation, "we have heard, we have read in the scriptures that persons like you can at will cure bodily diseases completely. Diseases are fully cured if a strong desire is created in the mind that one should get cured, and the concentrated mind is directed once to the diseased part of the body for some time. May you not just try this once?" So I think all of you have grasped what was the view of Shashadara Tarka Chudamani, the great Pandit, the great scholar in Sanskrit, Vedas, and other Puranas. He told that it is mentioned in the scriptures that great yogis like you can simply at tries with the will, you can cure bodily diseases completely. Diseases are fully cured if a strong desire is created in the mind that one should get cured, and the concentrated mind is directed once to the diseased part of the body for some time. May you not just try this once? Sri Ramakrishna replied to that, how could you, a scholar, a Pandit, speak like that? Can I feel an inclination? Can I feel an inclination to withdraw the mind? To withdraw the mind from the existence, knowledge, bliss, that is God. existence, infinite, existence absolute, the sum total of all existence, all the living beings, plus the existence of this physical world, existence of everything, the whole universe, whatever exists, and much more than that is God. That is called Sat Chit, infinite consciousness, a small part of which is knowledge. Infinite consciousness, absolute. Then the very important feature of God is infinite bliss, absolute. So that is God. These are the three words, minimum words, which can be used to describe God. So existence, knowledge, bliss is God. I have given my mind to this existence, knowledge, real existence, real knowledge or consciousness, and bliss. Can I feel an inclination to withdraw my mind from the existence, knowledge, bliss to which I have offered my mind and place it on this dilapidated cage of bones and flesh? All the life, a person will become a yogi or a great realized soul, or he becomes a Ishvara Koti or a Avatar Purusha because he has taken away his mind from this unreal world, Anatman, and identified completely with the Atman, Atmaikya Bhava, Brahmaikya Bhava, become one with God, totally effaced, totally erased his individuality, perfect self abnegation. And Ramakrishna is telling, I have offered it and placed it in existence, knowledge, bliss, that is God. And can I remove my mind from the reality and place it on the unreality, which you know is fleeting, temporary? It is just like a worn out cloth, and place it on this dilapidated. See the use there. Bhagavan Krishna in Bhagavad Gita has told the body as a garment. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. Here, Sri Ramakrishna is comparing this body to the dilapidated cage of bones and flesh. I have offered this mind from the beginning of my life to existence, knowledge, bliss. And now you are a scholar, you are a great Pandit. You have read the scriptures and you know the scriptures tell that everything else is unreal, God alone is real. And after offering my mind to this existence, knowledge, bliss, which is the reality, will I take it back from that reality and place this mind for this unreal thing? So, and shall I place this mind on this dilapidated cage of bones and flesh? Now, Pandit couldn't answer anything. The Pandit was silent, the scholar got silent. Swami Vivekananda and other devotees, however, did not remain passive. As soon as the Pandit left, they requested Sri Ramakrishna persistently, again and again, to act as the Pandit, the scholar, had suggested. You must, told Vivekananda and other direct disciples and the householder disciple. Dear sir, you must, said they, cure the disease for our sake, not for your sake. You need not do for it for your sake. You please do that for our sake, for the devotee's sake. Please, sir, please, again and again, Swami Vivekananda and other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna persisted After the Pandit went away, Swami Vivekananda and other devotees, however, did not remain passive. As soon as the Pandit left, they requested Sri Ramakrishna persistently to act as the Pandit had requested, suggested. You must, sir, you must, said they, cure the disease for our sake. You must cure it. To which Sri Ramakrishna replied, Ah, do I wish that I should suffer from a disease? Ramakrishna is telling, Ah, do I wish that I should suffer from a disease? I wish I were cured, but to be cured or not depends on my mother, the Divine Mother. I'll again repeat the words of Sri Ramakrishna. Do I wish that I should suffer from a disease? I wish I were cured. To be cured or not depends upon the Divine Mother. Swami Vivekananda then persisted. He never gave up. Then please ask Mother to cure the disease, sir. She will surely grant your request. She has fulfilled all your desires. Will she not fulfill this desire of yours? Then please ask Mother to cure the disease. She will surely grant your request. To which Sri Ramakrishna is saying, you say so, but such a request does not come out of my mouth. How can I make my mind so puny? While I have offered my mind to the highest to take it away from the highest and place it on this dilapidated cage of bone and flesh, this temporary body, which is not God, which is not Atman, it's only an instrument. I know this is not the reality. So, can I do that? Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. God alone is true, all else is unreal. So, Divine Mother has given the essence of Vedanta. And Sri Ramakrishna has taken that so deeply into his personality. When this world is unreal, untrue, false, and when God alone is true, how can I remove my mind from the true, from the truth, from the reality, and place it on this unreal thing? Do you want to make me so mean? Go to the emperor of this universe, and when the Lord is about to give whatever you want to ask a brinjal or two Karela bitter gourd or two chilies, green chilies from the emperor. There is a saying, great saying, later on Swami Vivekananda used to tell. I think Vivekananda got inspired by Sri Ramakrishna in all the matters. So the wonderful saying of Swami Vivekananda is, shall I drink the gutter water, the sewerage water, because I did not get ambrosia? Since I'm not now at present getting ambrosia, amruta, nectar, so shall I now go and drink the sewage water or the gutter water? No, never. Even if I do not get ambrosia, I will never go and drink the gutter water. I may die, I may give up my life, but I will never take the gutter water. I will take only the ambrosia. when I know that what is ambrosia, amrita, immortality. Ah, do I wish I should suffer from the disease? I wish I were cured. To be cured or not, it depends upon mother. Swami Vivekananda persisted, then please ask the Divine Mother to cure the disease. She will surely grant you a request. She has never told no to your request. Whatever you have even not wished, you just wanted, she had bought that within seconds. And if you ask, definitely Divine Mother will cure or give whatever you want. To which Sri Ramakrishna replied, you say so, but such a request does not come out of my mouth. To which Swami Vivekananda again persisted, no, sir, that will not do. You must ask the Divine Mother. For our sake, you must do it. For our sake, you must do it. Then Sri Ramakrishna agreed, all right, I shall see. I shall see if I can ask her. I shall see. He never told, I will ask, I will cure my disease. He told, I shall see if I can ask her. All right, I shall see if I can ask her. After a few hours, Swami Vivekananda came again to Sri Ramakrishna and asked him, sir, did you ask her? What did the Divine Mother say? Sir, did you ask her? What did your Divine Mother say? Sri Ramakrishna replied, I said to the mother, Mother, I cannot eat anything on account of this, showing the sore in his throat, the cancerous wound in his throat, showing that I told Mother, Mother, I cannot eat anything on account of this sore. Please do something that I can eat a little. But the mother said, why, my dear child, you are eating through all this mouth. You are eating through all this mouth, showing all the people, all the living beings, showing all of you. That is the highest essence of Vedanta, practical Vedanta. Why should I not feel jealous of others? Because if somebody is getting more talent, more knowledge, anything, you are getting that because you are the Atman and you are present there too. If somebody is suffering, if somebody is having a disease, he doesn't have eyes, he doesn't have money, he's poor, it's you who are suffering there in him. So go try to help him because you are the person who are suffering there. It's everywhere. It's you who are enjoying, you are suffering in everybody. Are you separate from these people or all the living beings? It's you who are everywhere. That is the highest knowledge Sri Ramakrishna has got. And after getting that knowledge, should I take away that expansion? Now you can understand the words of Swami Vivekananda. Expansion is life. Contraction is death. You contract your mind only to your body, only to your selfish aggrandizement of your sensual desires, then you die. It is death. Selfishness is death. Contraction is death. Expansion is life. So you have expanded to identify yourself with all the Atman, with all the living beings. So what a wonderful reply by the Divine Mother. Ramakrishna told, Mother, I said to the mother, Mother, I cannot eat anything on account of this sore. Please do something that I can eat a little. But the Divine Mother replied, "Why, my dear child, you are eating through all these mouths, showing all of you. I could speak no more for shame." I got ashamed. So in South Africa, they use this word for anything and everything. Shame. So you can see the word used by Sri Ramakrishna here. When Divine Mother told, "You are eating through all the mouths in this world, showing all of you, I couldn't speak no more for shame." I felt ashamed. What is this? I am asking Divine Mother such a puny thing, such a little thing. I have earned so much of knowledge, and now I have contracted my mind to this curing of this flesh, bones, and pus, and the vermin's there. Ah, how wonderful was his lack of body consciousness. So now, did you understand what is bereft of body consciousness? When Lord Krishna tells in the Bhakti Yoga, people who do not have body consciousness are the only ones who can easily take up the Jnana Yoga and proceed forward quickly in that. People who have the body consciousness have to go through the Bhakti Yoga and other yogas. Jnana Yoga is meant for those people. It's very difficult path. For the people who have the body consciousness, you have to supplicate the Lord. You have to worship the Lord. That's what in Bhagavad Gita Lord Krishna has told. So now you can see how wonderful was his lack of body consciousness. He was not at all attached to this body. So Shardanandaji Maharaj is explaining, how wonderful was his lack of body consciousness. How extraordinary was the non-dual knowledge. Now you can understand the intensity of non-dual knowledge. How completely effaced perfect self-abnegation. Perfect self-abnegation is the basis of all the yogas, of all spiritual life. Completely negating, completely removing the ego, the body consciousness, the selfishness, the ego. He is the goal, he is the basis, he is the foundation of spiritual life. So Shardananda Maharaj is telling about Sri Ramakrishna. How wonderful was his lack of body consciousness. How extraordinary was the non-dual knowledge wherein he was established. He was then for 6 months continuously on a daily diet of about half a pound of barley water only. He was then for 6 months continuously on a daily diet of about half a pound of barley water only. As soon as he heard the mother of the universe telling him in that condition, "You are eating through so many mouths, you are eating through all the living beings. Why do you want to eat only through your mouth? Are you not present in all the living beings? Is that not highest non-dual knowledge?" As soon as he heard the Divine Mother of the universe tell him in that condition, "You are eating through so many mouths," the master became silent and bent his head in shame. The master bent his head in shame, thinking, "What an evil act have I committed? What an evil act have I committed? I have called this limited body I. I have identified again with this body. I have called this limited body I, while with so much of sadhana, spiritual aspiration, I removed my body consciousness and placed it, identified with the Parabrahma, with the Satchit Ananda, with God, and now I have called this limited body I. I am trying to keep my mind on this unreal thing. If only we could appreciate even a little of this exalted mood of the Master. If only we could appreciate even a little of this exalted mood of the Master. Oh, what a wonderful Master we had the good fortune to meet. Shardanandaji Maharaj is again exclaiming, oh, what a wonderful Master we had the good fortune to meet. What a marvelous harmony of all the paths of religion. What a marvelous harmony of all the paths of religion, of knowledge, Jnana Yoga and devotion, Bhakti Yoga, of concentration, Raja Yoga, and action, Karma Yoga. What a marvelous harmony of all the paths of religion, of knowledge, devotion, concentration, and action, both ancient and modern. Have you not seen in him? The rishis, the authors of the Upanishads, say that a person who is a true knower of Brahman, a person who is a true knower of Brahman, knows everything and all his thoughts and desires come true. It becomes a Satya Sankalpa once you realize the Parabrahma, Satchit Ananda, the highest Godhead. The rishis, the authors of the Upanishads say that a person who is true knower of Brahman knows everything and all his thoughts and desires come true. He becomes a Satya Sankalpa, true-willed. All objects and powers of the external world obey his desires implicitly and undergo corresponding changes. Is it any wonder if his own body and mind also did the same? It is not in the power of ordinary people to test the truth of these facts. But we can say confidently that though we are men of small powers, the manner in which we used to test Sri Ramakrishna left no ground for disbelief in his credentials, because all these direct disciples were highly educated, bereft of one or two. All were educated in the modern science, modern education, mathematics. Ramakrishna Nandaji Maharaj was adept in mathematics. Swami Vivekananda was adept in so many fields of science. Everything, arts, commerce, everything. Shardanandaji Maharaj, the author of this book, again was adept in so many fields of knowledge. They were not ordinary people. They have tested Sri Ramakrishna thoroughly. They have not left any stone unturned. They have done all the test. The litmus test, that most difficult test on Sri Ramakrishna, and then only they have accepted. So now it is Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling it is not in the power of ordinary people to test the truth of these facts, but we can confidently say that, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, we can confidently say that though we are men of small powers, the manner in which we used to test Sri Ramakrishna, the manner in which we used to test Sri Ramakrishna left no ground for disbelief, left no ground for disbelief in his credentials. Sri Ramakrishna stood the test smilingly and used to tell us as if in ridicule. Sri Ramakrishna stood all the tests and examinations smilingly and used to tell us as if in ridicule, ah, lack of faith even now. Ah, lack of faith even now. Have faith, firm faith, have faith, firm faith. The very the very one who appeared as Sri Ramachandra. Ah, lack of faith even now. Have faith, firm faith. The very one who appeared as Sri Ramachandra and Krishna is now within this sheath showing his own body. But this time the advent is incognito. This time the advent is incognito, like the supervision of his own kingdom by a king in disguise. In olden days, the kings would sometimes would not believe in the ministers and his espionage or the spies used to keep an eye everywhere in the kingdom and bring the news to him through the army commanders or the ministers. So sometimes the king himself was disguised like a common man. If he goes like a king, nobody will give the reality. All the subjects will tell only good things to him. So the king used to disguise as an ordinary person like a beggar or a mendicant and go amongst the people, stay with them, talk to them, and he would come to know the reality of his subjects himself. So that is called incognito. So though is the king, though is the emperor, he changes his outward look like an ordinary person, goes into the kingdom, stays with the common people, and then he knows the reality there, and then comes back as a king, and he will take the rectificative measures. So that is called incognito. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is telling to the direct disciples or the other disciples, ah, lack of faith even now, have faith, firm faith. The very one who appeared as Rama and Krishna is now within this sheath showing his own body. But this time the advent is incognito, like the supervision of his own kingdom by a king in disguise. As soon as there is publicity, as soon as there is publicity of whispering, as soon as there is publicity or whispering, the king moves away from that place. It is just like that. Many events of Sri Ramakrishna's life open our eyes to the truth of that above mentioned idea of the Upanishad. What is that? The idea of Upanishads? All the ideas that arise in a man's mind are truly known to himself alone. That is, he alone can gauge their frequency, intensity, range, etc. Others merely infer them from external signs. Others can imagine, infer, inference. It's called anumana, inference. Suppose there is smoke far away, yonder, then you can infer that there is fire. There is another inference. Pino Devadatta Divana Bhunkte Ratri Bunjate. Devadatta, a person, Devadatta is becoming fat every day, obese every day. But people are saying that he doesn't eat at all in the daytime. He doesn't eat anything in the daytime. He's fasting in the daytime. But he's becoming obese. He's becoming fat. He's gaining weight more and more every day. So what can you infer from that Anumana inference? That if he's not eating in the daytime, yet becoming fat and obese, that means you can infer that he's eating nicely in the night time. That is the Nyaya. Pino Devadatta Divana Bhunkte Ratri Punjate. Devadatta is becoming fat, gaining weight more and more every day, even though he's not eating anything during the daytime. The inference is so he's eating nicely in the night time. So like that, that's called inference. So that is one of the ways by which we can know pramana. There are so many pramanas. Inference or anumana is one of them. So all the idea that arise in man's mind are truly known to himself alone. That is, he alone can gauge their frequency, intensity, range, etc. Other people merely infer them from external signs. The subjective nature of these ideas is within the direct experience of all. Like the ideas of ordinary persons, those of men who experience samadhi are also mere modification of the mind or manifestation of the mental powers. They arise in the mind and merge in it. It is impossible to see or show their counterparts in the external world. But the reverse is the case in regard to many of the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna. Take, for example, his desire to put up a fence around the Panchavati. Take, for example, his desire to put up a fence around Panchavati when he saw that the plants planted by him were cropped by cattle, the goats, the cows, and other animals would eat it off. So, when he saw that the plants planted by him were cropped by the cattle, shortly after there was a high tide in the Ganga, the river, and all the articles necessary to make that fence, the barbed wire, and the other implements to put on the fence, to dig the mud, the implements to dig the mud, the twine to tie them, everything, whatever is needed for fencing. So the river Ganga bought it with the high tide and threw it on the bank wherever Ramakrishna could get it. So that just the desire arose in his mind. Take, for example, his desire to put up a fence around the Panchavati when he saw that the plants planted by him were cropped by cattle. Shortly after, there was a high tide in the Ganga, and all the articles necessary to make the fence, some mangrove posts, coir, rope, etc., with even a chopper, came floating and ran aground just near the spot, and he put up the fence with the help of the gardener of the Kali temple named Bhartabhari. So the gardener who is to help Sri Ramakrishna was Bhartabhari. Take another example, his assertion in the course of an argument with Mathur Nath, the son-in-law of Rasamani, that anything can happen by the will of God, that a plant producing red flower can yield a white flower too. And Mathur Nath refusal to accept that proposition because he was also educated in science. The very next day, Sri Ramakrishna saw two flowers, one red and the other white, on the twigs of the same branch of China rose in the garden. He broke the branch with the flower and handed it over to Mathur Nath. Take again another example. The arrival at the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar of a perfected person in each of the faiths of the Tantra, the Vedanta, the Vaishnava, Islam, etc., and the initiation of Sri Ramakrishna by each in his particular faith. Whenever a strong desire to practice any of those faiths arose in Sri Ramakrishna's mind, or still another example can be given, Sri Ramakrishna yearned to meet his inner circle of devotees, whom he had seen in visions long ago, and called out for them in the intensity of his longing. And they came one after another, and he recognized and received them. Many such instances can be cited. On a close scrutiny of the subject, these facts make it clear that many of the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna did not end like those of the ordinary human minds in mere mental modifications, but produced corresponding changes in the event of the external world through the influence of an inscrutable power. These were the facts. Let the reader ponder them critically and arrive at their own conclusions. We have already said that Sri Ramakrishna is to remain in Bhavamukha, I've explained many times about that state, Bhavamukha, when Sri Ramakrishna used to merge his mind in the existence, knowledge, bliss, Satchit Ananda, the Parabrahma, the Lord, formless, attributeless Lord beyond everything in the Turiya Avastha. Divine Mother wanted to do good to this world through this personality called Sri Ramakrishna. So she commanded Sri Ramakrishna to stay in that state of Bhavamukha. What is that? Staying on the threshold. If you keep a lamp on the wall, so it can brighten up both the places, either side of the wall, on the threshold. So that state is called Bhavamukha. So Ramakrishna was asked to stay on the threshold of this Nirakar Nirguna Parabrahma, Satchit Ananda. On the one side, you can be in touch. On the other side, you can see this created world, this universe. On the other side, you are on the threshold. You can anytime go merge in the Parabrahma. You can come to this world and do whatever work is to be done. That is the state of the Bhavamukha. Divine Mother commanded Sri Ramakrishna to be in that state of Bhavamukha. So we have already said that Master used to remain in that state of Bhavamukha at all times except during the Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 months. That is, he was merged in only the Satchit Ananda Parabrahma Swarupa for 6 months. Only during that period, he was completely merged in that. After all the time, after that, he was in this Bhavamukha. Anytime he could go there merge, anytime he could come to this world. That is why we see he used to have different spiritual relations of love with different devotees, a particular relation with a particular devotee. And he always kept the relation intact. His lifelong filial relationship with all women. Filial means like that of a child. And seeing all the female character, female beings as his mother. That is the filial attitude, which also Lord Ganesha had, because he had the faith in the words of the mother, his own mother. What did the mother tell Parvati to Ganesha? She told, no, my dear child Ganesha, when he was a child of 4 or 5, no, from today, I, that is Parvati or Durga, exist in all the female beings. So after that, Ganesha started seeing the Divine Mother, his own mother, Parvati, in all the female beings, irrespective of human being, animals, fishes, birds, the microbes, or anything. So likewise, Sri Ramakrishna too had the same filial attitude, seeing Divine Mother, his own mother, in all the women. And that is called the filial attitude. His lifelong filial relationship with all women, who are the special manifestation of the bliss-giving and nourishing aspect of the Mother of the Universe, is now well known to all. But the fact that he had particular relationships with individual men, devotees, is perhaps not yet generally known. Therefore, it will not be out of place here to say something in this connection. The Master divided his devotees into 2 broad categories. One, born of an aspect of Shiva, and other, born of the aspect of Lord Vishnu. The whole world, all the living beings, especially human beings, can be divided into 2 aspects. One, born of the aspect of Lord Shiva, and another group is born of the aspect of Lord Vishnu. What does Lord Shiva represent? Vairagya, Sannyasa, Nivritti, giving up everything, concentration of mind, analytical, Gnana Marga. So these are all the aspects represented by Lord Shiva. What does Vishnu represent? Pravritti, activity, grandeur, extrovert nature. Everything of that aspect is represented by Lord Vishnu. The sum total of all these existence of all this group of people having that particular character in the manifested in their personality is Vishnu type. And if the people, all the group of people are representing another type, another character, the character represented by Lord Shiva, they are Shiva type. So Sri Ramakrishna categorized all the people into these two, Shiva type and Vishnu type. So as I told you, Shiva type is Vairagya, meditative, introvert, Pravritti, Nivritti. What is this Pravritti and Nivritti? Nivritti is giving up everything and going inwards. What is Pravritti? Going outwards. So that is Pravritti and Nivritti. The example can be given of the forces, centripetal force and centrifugal forces, drawing inwards and going outwards. When you take a stone or something, weight tied to the thread and go on rounding, you go rotating, you yourself rotate, then you will be pulling that. There will be two forces acting. One, drawing that weight towards yourself, then another force drawing away from you. You can see that everywhere in the whole world, you can see these two forces acting, centripetal and centrifugal. One is pravritti and one is nivritti. What is pravritti? Which is drawing outward, going outward. All this creation, all this manifestation, all this sustenance, everything, maintenance is pravritti. All coming back, absorbing everything, dissolution. That's why Shiva is not a destroyer. Don't think that when Srishti Sthiti Pralaya is destruction, okay, in one sense, that all the compounds are separated into its own original state, ether, akasha. So that is absorption, giving them rest. So the whole cosmos, you can see the Big Bang theory. So it is expanding. There is a Big Bang and everything is expanding. So that it was one is expanding now. The creation goes bigger, bigger. Milky Ways, the galaxies and everything goes bigger. Then again, after everything is stretched, it is pulled back, comes to oneself. It becomes, everything is dissolved. That is pralaya. So it is happening again and again, expanding and contracting. So dissolution, drawing it to himself. That is dissolution, giving rest. It's not pralayam is destruction. Don't we always think from the destruction or pralayam is from the think of killing everything. No, that is not the idea. Dissolution, withdrawing to oneself. That force, these two forces are always acting everywhere, whatever you see. The sun is pulling all the planets towards itself and they are rotating, revolving around it and with rotation and revolution. And the planet, those they're having so much of mass, the Jupiter, the Earth, Venus, Mercury, all are having, even the moon to the Earth. The Earth is holding on the moon, the satellite. It is revolving around the Earth. So one force of the Earth, the gravity is pulling the moon towards itself. The weight of the moon is trying to get away from the Earth. Two forces, centripetal, centrifugal, are acting there. So pravritti and nivritti, both are acting here. So that represented that quality by Shiva or called Shiva type. People have manifested, not that they don't have the Vishnu type, Vishnu character, they have it, but it is not activated, it is not manifested. Shiva type is manifested. The other man of the Vishnu is dormant. And in the Vishnu type, this now the ideal which is represented by Lord Vishnu, activity, karma, grandeur, everything, creation, sustenance, extrovertedness. So that is all manifested. The other Shiva type is still dormant. So these are the two types. That's why The Lord Shiva represent that, and Lord Vishnu represent this. That's why you can see in the temple of Lord Shiva, is only Abhisheka Priya. Lord Shiva is called Abhisheka Priya. They pour only water. At the most, they may pour some milk on him. That's all. Always water. Abhisheka Priya. He will be poured on water. No decoration to Shiva. Very less golden ornaments, matted hairs. So, bilwa leaves. That's all. Not much decoration. Only water is poured on him. Why? It is Nivritti, going inwards. And see, go to the Vishnu temple, Alankara Priya. What grand decorations, gold, diamond. Go to Tirupati or any other Vishnu temple. Varieties of emeralds, diamonds, pearls, all wonderful things, gold and decoration, and so many things will be there. So many types of sweets, so many type of this thing will be offered. Chappan Bhog, 16 Shodashopachara, all big things to Vishnu. Why? Pravritti. So that is Vishnu type, this is Shiva type. Nivritti. So, yeah, how did Sri Ramakrishna establish relationship with all the people who used to come to him? So he divided broadly the people into Vishnu type and Shiva type. The master divided his devotees into two broad categories. One born of the aspect of Shiva, who have this nature of introvertedness, meditative type, analytical, logical, going inwards. The other type, Vishnu type, extrovert, activity, grandeur, emotional nature, devotional nature, that is Vishnu type. Knowledge, Gnana type, logical, analytical, Shiva type. So all these characters you can differentiate between Shiva and the other of Vishnu. Born of these aspects, he said that the devotees of these two groups differ in their nature because that aspect is manifested behavior and in their preference and suitability for particular forms of spiritual discipline. Some choose that particular form of spiritual discipline, some choose the other. So he could clearly understand the difference, but it is beyond our power to explain what this difference is. Therefore, let the reader know this much, that the character of Shiva and Vishnu are, as it were, two molds. The character of Shiva and Vishnu are, as it were, two molds or models, and the mental makeup of the devotee is cast in one or the other of these two molds. So the Shiva type is dormant, it is there inside potentially. The Vishnu type is kinetic, it's manifested in the personality. So, not that Shiva is not there within the nature of Shiva. In every human beings you can see is extrovert, is emotional, or liking to do all the decorations, and it can also change in your life to pattern. Who was Vishnu type can become Shiva type later on. So the work of the Guru, the duty of the Guru is to manifest the Shiva type if he is a Vishnu person who has manifested the Vishnu this thing, so that he will become Paripurna Parabrahma, totality. Both Shiva and Vishnu type manifested is the totality, holistic development. That is holistic development. If in whom the Shiva type is manifested, if you go on developing Shiva type itself, it is one-sided manifest. It's not holistic. So, seeing at what portion of your development is, if your Shiva type is not fully developed, first the Guru will allow you to develop that fully, and then give you the Vishnu type. Example can be given is of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda had manifested when he came the Shiva type. That's why they used to call him as Shiva Avatar. The character of Shiva is manifested in Lord, in Swami Vivekananda, logical, analytical, scientific, then the knowledge, path of knowledge, The emotion is there, but it is dormant within. Manifestation is of Shiva. So when the mantra was given to him, when the path was given to Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna didn't give him the Shiva mantra, but he was given the Rama mantra, because the Vishnu type is to be manifested, the emotional. The Shiva, the Vishnu character is to be manifested to become a total holistic development, that is Paripurna Parabrahma. Another thing which we can see in Ramakrishna is whenever the devotee used to come to Sri Ramakrishna, he used to mentally offer Tulasi. If he would accept Tulasi leaf mentally offered by Ramakrishna, that means he is of Vishnu type. If he doesn't accept, rejects that Tulasi, and then he used to offer mentally Bilva. When Bilva was offered and that person accepted, then Ramakrishna used to consider that he is Shiva type. So the development is of now of the Vishnu to make him a holistic development, complete development, to become the Paripurna Parabrahma, totality of the manifestation of all the characters in them, and going beyond that. So that is the work of the Guru. What the mantra will be given is the ideal for him for the further development of either Vishnu type or of the Shiva type, or whatever it might be. So all the other nature, character comes under these two types, the Devi type, the Subramanya type, the Ganesha type, all the other 330 million gods, which represent different ideals, they come under these two broad categories of the Vishnu type and Shiva type. So that's the Guru gives the mantra for their further development in the stages of evolution, seeing where they are. Therefore, let the reader know this much, that the character of Shiva and Vishnu are as it were two molds or models, two molds or two models. And the mental makeup of the devotee is cast in one or the other of these two molds. You can see the likings, you can see their character, you can see their taste. Then you can understand, yeah, he's Shiva type. What path he's going to take. You can see the other character, likes, tastes. You leave the baby, keep all the things arranged there. You leave the baby. Baby's just born. It'll go crawling and choose some things. By that you can know that what nature is of that. What is the state of development of that baby? Because it selects something. They do the test in many places in the houses. They'll keep so many things. The money will be kept, then the weapons will be kept, so many other things. They allow that baby to crawl and choose whatever it wants. So the baby, because of its past impressions and its past development, it will have certain likings. It goes and selects something. So they come to know something of that baby. That's a different thing. Now, so the two mental makeups, the two molds or the models, one is the Vishnu and one is the Shiva type. That is the mental makeup of the devotee is cast in one or others of these two molds. The master had all kinds of spiritual relationship of love, that is Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, etc., established with all those devotees. He having particular relations with particular persons. For example, he used to say of Narendranath, that is, would be Swami Vivekananda. About Narendranath, Ramakrishna used to say, Narendra is, as it were, my counterpart. The principle that resides within this. So Narendra is my counterpart. The principle, the ideal, the mold, the model that resides in this, he used to show, you to never tell I. Showing himself, Ramakrishna used to tell the principle that resides within this, showing Sri Ramakrishna himself is female, Divine Mother Kali, female. And that which is within him, Narendranath, Swami Vivekananda, is male, Shiva type. He looked upon Swami Brahmananda as his very son, the spiritual son, Manasaputra. Sri Ramakrishna had a particular relationship of this nature with each of the intimate devotees. What is meant by son? Brahmananda is also having the same nature manifested in him, not fully, to some extent. That's why he is a spiritual son. But with Narendra, the relationship is different. The principle that resides within Ramakrishna is to tell it is female, Divine Mother Kali. And that which resides within Narendranath, showing Narendranath, would be Swami Vivekananda, is male, that is Shiva type. He looked upon Swami Brahmananda, Rakhal, as his very son, Manasaputra. Why? It is the same nature. It's the same manifestation. It's in small quantity compared to Sri Ramakrishna. So, he's a spiritual son. The master had a particular relationship of this nature which each of the intimate devotees. The master had a particular relationship of this nature which each of the intimate devotees, both lay and monastic, both with the householder devotees and also with the monastics, used to have different relationship. It is needless to say that he had the relationship of calmness, shanta, with the ordinary devotees. So with the ordinary devotees, he had the relationship of shanta. We all know, we have studied that shanta and other relationship. So with the ordinary devotees, Sri Ramakrishna had this shanta bhava, the relationship of shanta. We have studied this. The sages, the rishis had this aspect towards God. So what is meant by shanta? Calm attitude, not that of the enmity. No enmity, calm. No special relationship to calm. So that is called shanta, shanta bhava. So with ordinary devotees, Sri Ramakrishna used to have this shanta relationship. Then it is needless to say that he had the relationship of calmness, shanta, with the ordinary devotees, for he had the firm conviction that they were all forms of Narayana himself. It is on knowing the internal nature of each of the devotees that Sri Ramakrishna had a particular spiritual relationship established with him. For he used to say, I clearly see everything in a man's mind like articles kept in a glass case. These were the utterances of Sri Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna used to say, I clearly see everything in a man's mind like articles in a glass case. One can never act contrary to one's nature. One can never act contrary to one's nature. Therefore, it was not in the power of any of the devotees to act contrary to that spiritual relation of love in which Sri Ramakrishna stood to him. If, however, anyone, in imitation of another, acted contrarily in opposite way against his own path, Sri Ramakrishna felt annoyed and would clearly point out his mistake. As an example, we can cite the case of a devotee. The master called Girish a Bhairava. A fierce aspect of Shiva is called Bhairava. So Sri Ramakrishna had the relationship with this devotee Girish as that of a Bhairava. Who is a Bhairava? The Bhairava are a kind of terrific demigods addicted to strong drinks and meat eating and noted for their extraordinary powers. They are devoted followers of Lord Shiva. Who are Bhairavas? The Bhairavas are a kind of terrific demigods addicted to strong drinks and meat eating and noted for their extraordinary powers. They are devoted followers of Shiva. So now, Sri Ramakrishna had this relationship with Girish Chandra Ghosh. The master called Girish a Bhairava. One day, he saw during his ecstasy in the temple of Kali that Girish was a Bhairava. He would smilingly put up with Girish importunities. and rude language. So Girish Chandra Ghosh used to use rude language and opportunities. So, but Sri Ramakrishna used to put up with all those rude behavior. Why? He knew that he was a Bhairava. He knew what is his nature. So, accordingly, Sri Ramakrishna established a relationship with him as a Bhairava. So, though he was very rude, though he had Girish importunities and rude language, Sri Ramakrishna used to put up for, he saw that there was an extraordinary tender feeling and complete dependence hidden under the covering of the rudeness of his language. One day, another beloved devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, who had seen Girish and also the behavior of Sri Ramakrishna to him, he would put up with all that rude language and rude behavior, importunities. So another devotee tried to imitate Girish. So then one day another beloved devotee of Sri Ramakrishna imitated Girish's rude language in his behavior with Sri Ramakrishna, at which Sri Ramakrishna became extremely displeased with him and afterwards pointed out his mistake. This is not your nature. You are imitating somebody else. Never imitate. Have your growth according to your nature. Develop it according to your nature. Don't imitate anybody else. Suppose a donkey will put the hide or skin of a tiger. Can it become a tiger? It will be a caricature. It will be a laughing stock. So never imitate anybody. Develop only you can take the best of somebody else. Don't compare yourself with others, but take the best of that person and inculcate those qualities into yours. In a way, you can naturally grow. It should never be imitation, external imitation, but it should be a natural inculcation, taking those good qualities into your personality and develop according to your growth. That should be the growth. Never compare with another person. That is its different growth. Each is a unique creation of Lord. Never compare with anybody else. You have to grow according to your nature, according to your development. So only take the best in the other people and inculcate that quality into yourself and grow according to your nature. Never imitate externally. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is showing us in spiritual life or any part of the life. No comparison. Don't compare. You compare yourself with yourself. What I was yesterday, what am I now? What will I be in the night? What will I be tomorrow? Have comparison only with your life. How much have I moved? How much have I progressed? Take all the good things from all over the world, from all the people, inculcate, internalize all those good qualities into yourself, then develop according to your growth. That is real growth. That is true growth. So when somebody tried to imitate the other person's behavior, Sri Ramakrishna would get annoyed because that is not your nature. Then instead of growing, you will be diverting. You will not grow if you compare yourself with others. If you take those character and imitate only externally, then it's very bad. Your growth will be stunted. So no imitation, no hypocrisy. That's why Swami Vivekananda used to tell again and again, wonderful saying of Swami Vivekananda. You can connect it here. What is that wonderful saying of Swami Vivekananda? Every one of us, all of us, irrespective of anybody, every one of us are wasting 80% of our energies in showing to the world what we are not. Every one of us are wasting 80% of energy, of our energy. We are all wasting 80% of our energy in showing to the world what we are not. Then that is now corroborated from the works of psychology. The psychology also tells the same thing. All of us are wasting 80% of our energy in showing to the world what we are not. But psychology has not given one more solution to that which Swami Vivekananda has given. Swami Vivekananda has added, if we had used half of that energy, out of that 80% of the energy which we are wasting, if we had used half of that energy to become what we wanted to be, we would have easily achieved that. I always give a simple example for that. Okay, I do not know English. Let me imagine I do not know English. Now, instead of learning English, I go on using some bombastic words and showing off that I know good English. So I always have to put on an air of superiority that I know too much of English and go on trying to show to the world always so much of energy I'll be wasting, and but I will be speaking wrong English only. I never try to learn. I always take it from here and there, make a hodgepodge. In India, in those days, they used to call it as butler English. The Indians used to be kept then during the British rule as the workers, as the cooks, as the house servants, housemaids. So they used to speak. Now the communication with the British should be in English. They can't understand your language. So somehow they learn here and there some words, go on speaking wrong English. The other master, the British, would understand that, somehow manage. So that hodgepodge or mixture English was called as butler English. So we developed that butler English because we just want to imitate, show off, but we had used half of that energy which we are showing off to learn little English, and we would have become masters by this time. So all of our life is wasted in just showing and showing to the outer world. If we had become sincere, used half of that energy which we are wasting in doing this nautanki or the drama to show to the world, half of that energy, even 10% of the energy, we would have become masters of that particular subject. So all our energy is wasting in showing off and showing off what we are not. So we'll again repeat the wonderful saying of Swami Vivekananda. Every one of us, irrespective of whoever you may be, every one of us are wasting 80% of our energy. Just imagine 80% of our energy in showing to the world what we are not. If we had used half of that energy to become what we wanted to be, we would have easily achieved that. So Ramakrishna would not like imitation, caricature, aping. We always ape, just like the monkey. You put on a cap, the monkey also put on a cap. You throw the cap, the monkey will throw the cap. It is only imitation. It doesn't internalize, it doesn't inculcate. So that's called aping. We like the dress of the Westerners. So you will put on the black coat, black suit, black shoes, black tie, everything black, hat. Why were the Britishers using that? Why are the Europeans using it? The black color. Because in Europe, in British, in Britain, and all other places, it's so cold. You get sun very rarely. Recently, I read in Alaska, there was the sunlight and there was a sunset. That would be the last sunset or sun seen in Alaska for this year. They will get sunset only in 2021 or some end of 2021 or 2022. There will be no sun at all there in Alaska. It will be always 6 months darkness or more than that, because it is at the North Pole. So in Europe, where there was more rain, no sunshine, so to preserve, to absorb the sunlight and keep yourself warm, your body warm, heat. So black absorbs heat. Black color absorbs heat. Why is it black? It is not, the color is not black. The substance, the pigments on that, anything which looks black is, what is the idea behind all the colors? If you break up through the prism or whatever way, the light, white light, it has 7 colors. What are those colors? Their energy levels, different energy levels. So it can be divided as 7 colors. They are different energy levels. So when you see something color orange here or some other color, green or something, what do you mean by that? All the energy levels of the sunlight, that is the 7 colors of that all the other energy level is absorbed, that energy, and only that particular energy level is reflected. The orange color is reflected here. All the else is absorbed. So that's why this orange color, that is green color, because only green color is reflected from the sunlight. That's why if you go to the cloth selection, they tell do not do that in the tube light or any other kind of light. It looks very different. But if you come to the sunlight, the real color will be something else. So you should always select in the sunlight. Then only you will come to know what is the correct true color. So now that's the color. The idea of color is pigmentation is because it is absorbing that particular thing. It's not really of that particular color. If there is no sunlight, no color at all. So black is absorbing all the energy levels of the sunlight, all the colors, and it doesn't reflect anything. That's why it is dark in color or black in color. That means all the sun energy is absorbed. That's why when you wear black color cloth, you will be warm. It becomes more warmer. So the British, the Europeans, they wear the black suits in that country because of the winter and no sunlight. And we people imitate them, the Westerners, we bring to the hot country like India or another place which is very, very hot, and we wear the black cloth, black suit, black tie, black necktie, black hat, black shoes, black pants, and we make ourselves hotter and hotter like a oven, just in case of imitation, and we die out of that heat. Just imitation. Why do they do that? We don't understand it. Go to Arabia, go to other countries in India. Why do they wear the white cloth? Because white reflects all the energy. Why is it white color? Because all the light colors or the colors of the energy levels of sunlight is reflected. That's why it's white. No color, because it is not absorbing anything. That's why when you wear white color, you'll be cool. You will not have the problem of the sunlight heat. That's why in India, where there is too much of heat, that's why when it is in the Arabia and other deserts, they wear the white cloth. Why? Because it reflects all the sunlight and it will keep you cool, cotton and other things. So we imitate and we are in trouble. So the cowboys, the hardworking boys, the cow ranchers, the shepherds, they wanted that each time changing the cloth, washing it was difficult. And also they have to do the hard work. So the cloth should not be torn very quickly. So they made these jeans, the cowboys and the shepherds and the other hardworking people. They used to wear jeans so that whatever you do, it doesn't get spoiled. You can use it for many, many days. You need not wash it for a long time. So it is very thick and it will be good for your hard work. So now the Americans, the cowboys were wearing the jeans, and all the other people started imitating that and wearing jeans everywhere and anywhere. They, to do the work of the as cowboys, to look after the cow ranches and the shepherd job, they used to do that. Okay. Why do you want to do it? Imitate that. Like a donkey putting on the tiger skin. Imitate them and put the jeans. That was not meant for you. It is meant for the cowboys, for the shepherds to do that. If the shepherds and the cowboys do that, wonderful. So we are going out of the nature to imitate them. The plumbers, the hard workers in the buildings, going to the 10th floor, 20th floor, 15th floor to work there on the cranes. They have to carry all the implements. So they had many pockets in their pants and their shirt so that they can keep the nuts and bolts and nails and wrenches and all the instruments in different pockets. Because when they go there, everything will be available. So in their pants and shirt, there will be so many pockets and they used to do all the work. And that plumber's pant and shirt, which has so many pockets, has become an imitation for the modern day youths. They will wear so many pockets and everything is empty. Why? Because they have seen the Western countries, those plumbers and other workers using that. Imitate them. It is of no use. Extra cloth. So imitating and wasting your energy. We waste 80% of our energy in showing to the world what we are not. If we had used half of that energy to become what we wanted to be, we would have easily achieved that. So Ramakrishna would not like that another person imitating. He should grow according to his nature. So the example of that devotee, Bhairava, Girish Chandra Ghosh, when he would do Girish importunities and rude language, would be put up because that is his growth nature. So he had established relationship in that way. For he saw that there was an extraordinary tender feeling and complete dependence hidden under the covering of the rudeness of his language. One day, another beloved devotee of Sri Ramakrishna imitated Girish rude language and indecent language and used it on Sri Ramakrishna behavior with him, at which Sri Ramakrishna became annoyed, extremely displeased with him, and afterwards pointed out his mistake. Do not do that. That's not your nature. You should not grow in this way. Don't imitate Girish. Girish is a Bhairava. That's his nature. That is the way I established relationship with him. You are a different person. Your growth is a different thing. You have to grow according to your nature. Don't imitate. Don't. The donkey should become a mule. The donkey can become a good horse, but it cannot directly go to become a tiger. Don't imitate to become a tiger. Try to become the next thing where you are. Grow according to your nature. The jackfruit tree cannot be made as a mango tree. The mango tree cannot be made as a neem tree. The mango tree can be made a better mango tree. The neem tree can be made a better neem tree. So it has to grow according to the nature. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna could understand because he was in Bhavamukha. He could know the development, the nature of every person, the bhava. So accordingly, he used to, whoever devotees came to him, he used to establish that particular relationship with them because he was in Bhavamukha. He could see all the modes, he could see all the development of the nature. So established in Bhavamukha, Sri Ramakrishna knew well the spiritual mood natural to each man or woman, and in accordance with that mood, had a relation of love with him or her. We shall here present the reader with some of the numerous methods the master would adopt in leading each devotee to the realization of God. So that's very important here. For us, we are spiritual beings. We want to develop spiritually. Anybody, any stages of life, that's the same thing. But we are sincere spiritual aspirants, so we have to know. So we shall here present. Shardanandaji Maharaj is now trying to present. We shall here present the reader with some of the numerous methods Sri Ramakrishna would adopt in leading each devotee to the realization of God according to his spiritual mood, how he would allow each devotee of different moods, different liking, different nature, step by step, from that particular step to the next step in that direction towards the highest, that is God realization. How you would allow them to develop. Master would adopt so many different ways, so many different mantras. So the mantras and other things, the deities are nothing but all the deities, particular Ishta Devata has been. Why do you like that Devata, Ishta Devata? Because your growth, your natural tendency is that of that nature of that Devata. Why do you like Krishna? Why somebody likes Vishnu? Why somebody likes Subramanya? Why somebody likes Saraswati? Why like somebody likes Lakshmi? Because you are at that state of development. So for your further development, that is the Ishta Devata. So Ramakrishna could know. Simply because somebody wants that Ishta Devata because it is more special, that person is taken that, I too want it. No, it can't happen. You have to be given that particular mantra and that deity and the path which is suitable and which will give you the speedy spiritual progress, smooth, natural. So master would adopt in leading each devotee to the realization of God according to his spiritual mood, the particular person's spiritual mood, the aspirants. We have to remind the reader of Sri Ramakrishna's first vision of the Divine Mother in the temple precincts after he threatened to kill himself due to an agony of separation and of experience of non-dual consciousness that followed the vision. Now we'll all see how Sri Ramakrishna used to allow, guide. So he is a real guru. That is the real mentorship. Guru, the master, he is the real. That's why Ishvara only is called the Guru. He can know what is better. So it is the Ishvara who has come, the greatest of the Avatara, Lord Narayana, Lord Shiva, who has come down in the form of taking the human being. Is in Bhavamukha, you can understand. The ordinary gurus, they cannot understand. They will superimpose all their own attitude on everybody and the growth will be stunted. They do not know. The real guru is here, the Sadguru, the master, the Ishvara. So we have to remind the reader of the master's first vision, which we read now, of the Divine Mother in the temple precincts and of the experience of non-dual consciousness that followed the vision. It was after this experience that Sri Ramakrishna practiced the devotional mode of Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhura, all different attitudes he followed because he had to guide everybody in every different moods. That's why first he should know, he should have undergone all those things. So Sri Ramakrishna underwent all those moods, even in spite of having highest realization. He didn't stop there. He underwent everything. Why? Because when different people, different devotees, different aspirants of different nature, of different level of progress comes to him, he has to guide them correctly. So he should know everything. So he had to practice everything, every bit of it in spiritual life. Nothing was left. So he practiced everything, practiced in devotional modes of Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhura, everything, Dasya, and attained the highest stage in each of them. He attained the perfection, each mood, each path. Long afterwards, when the devotees of the inner circle came to him, a desire arose in mind of Sri Ramakrishna one day that the devotees also might experience ecstasy. And he prayed to Mother, and he prayed to Divine Mother accordingly. And immediately some of them began to have such experiences. In that mode of spirituality, their consciousness of the external world, including their own bodies, grew dim to a certain extent, and an external current of a particular spiritual mode, for example, the thought of a form of God, became so manifest that they saw that form come, stand before them, smile, speak, and do things as if it were vividly living. They mostly experienced that state while they listened to devotional songs. Sri Ramakrishna had another class of devotees who did not have a similar experience when listening to devotional music, but had visions of forms of God at the time of meditation. To begin with, they had visions of mere forms. Then, with the deepening of meditation, they saw their movements and heard their words. Others again had various kinds of visions in the beginning, but did not have any when their meditation grew deeper. But it is a matter of great surprise that immediately on hearing about the visions and experiences of each of them, Sri Ramakrishna knew that class to which each belonged, his current needs and his future visions and experiences. Sri Ramakrishna would come to know. Let us mention here one devotee as an example, instructed by Sri Ramakrishna. One of our friends, that is Swami Abhedanand. His earlier pre-monastic name was Kali Krishna. Kali, he was called Kali Tapasvi also. So, one of our friends, Swami Abhedananda, began practicing meditation and other spiritual exercises, and in the beginning had a clear experience of his chosen ideal in various forms at the time of meditation. He used to go to Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar at short intervals and inform Sri Ramakrishna of all the experiences he would have. On hearing of them, Sri Ramakrishna would say, very good, very good. Practice this way. Go on, go forward, and so on. Later, that friend, that is Swami Abhedananda, Kali, saw at the time of meditation that all the forms of gods, and goddesses merged. He had a vision. What kind of vision? That he had seen in that vision that all the forms of gods and goddesses merged in the body of one form. When the master came to know of it, when Abhedananda came and reported that vision to Sri Ramakrishna, he said, fine, fine, very good. You had the vision of Vaikunta. You had the vision of Vaikunta. You will have no more visions of forms here afterwards. Today you had the vision of Vaikuntha. You will have no more visions. Then our friend Abhedananda said, as a matter of fact, that was what exactly happened. I could not any longer see any form, whatever during meditation. Higher ideas such as the all pervasiveness of the Divine Lord arose in my mind and occupied it. I had then a great liking to have visions of forms and tried hard to have them again, but all to no purpose, no form could be seen anymore after that. That is the way Sri Ramakrishna used to guide individual people of different nature, different type, different spiritual growth. So that was Sri Ramakrishna, and the way he established that relationship, because he was in Bhavamukha, he knew everything. So now it's almost 8 o'clock. So let us stop our discussion on the life of Sri Ramakrishna, the great master, and we will continue in the next class. Now it's the time for question and answer. Today the subject was quite a little tough for you people, I think, but even then it is enjoyable. So if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, you can clear it now.
Pranam Maharaj.
Pranams Madhu, please tell.
Yeah, Maharaj, the modern world says if you are in Roman, be like a if you are in Rome, be like a Roman. So that's to say, even though your nature is not a Roman, but if you are in Rome, yeah, they say you be like a Roman. Is it imitating, or what does that signify, Maharaj?
No, it is suppose you are in Rome. So the Romans have their way of life, external way of eating, and adapt to that place. Adapt, suppose you are in family, your mother is of some nature. You don't go on trying to change her, but try to adjust with her. Suppose you are married to certain type of wife. The lady has different nature. She is brought up in some family. Now, if you go to force the family traditions and other things on her, then her growth and other things will be stunted, and there will be always friction. So adjust with whatever is there, accept people as they are. That is the idea behind telling, when you are in Rome, be a Roman. So adapt, adjust accordingly. Do not try to force your ideas on that place and try to change the external surroundings. So that is the idea behind it. Here, it's a different thing. You are growing spiritually. Suppose in your classroom while you are studying, somebody was expert in mathematics. You are expert in some other subject like arts or maybe in science. I mean, so I go to try to imitate myself, force myself to become a mathematician. That is not my this thing. It will take a lot of time. Yes, you can achieve that goal, but it will take a lot of time. But the easy and natural growth is what you are expert in, grow in that particular direction, add up to mathematics too. Gradually you can develop that and also become expert in future. So like that, it is adaptation and internal growth. Internalizing is entirely different. But this one is be a Roman means your adjustment with other people and the country and the surroundings.
Okay. Yeah. Not to change yourself. This.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Om Namo Narayanaya Maharaj.
Om Namo Narayanaya, Chandrup Jayanti, please tell.
The master went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 months, as was just stated earlier.
Yeah.
During that period of time, how did the outside world come to know not to disturb him so that he can continue in that kind of mood?
I think you attended the class I explained. At that time, Divine Mother was protecting him in all the ways. He was guiding. So the one sadhu came at that time who knew about all these physical features and science and of samadhi and of that yoga, Hatha Yoga. He came, he stayed there looking at that body, sitting in that posture in Panchavati for 6 months, or even from the beginning itself. He saw that he was in deep samadhi, so he should protect that body. He got that intention. He stayed there for 6 months or even more, and he used to try to bring consciousness to that body. He used to hit that with a ruler or something which he had on the head and the body, and try to bring the consciousness and force feed him with some food when he used to see some consciousness, and again beat or hit that body slowly from the neck downwards, so that the food will, there will be peristalsis and the food will go to the stomach, and he used to look after that body. Ramakrishna himself never had anything, as Ramakrishna himself told. He didn't know. He was just like an inert thing. Snakes would come cross his body, birds would come perch on the head, because the head was not being cleansed, it had become matted, and there would be dust and everything settled there. The ants would come, all the worms would come, so many things would go into his nose, into his ears. He was not at all aware. So, but that sadhu came, stayed there, looked at that body, saw that yes, Divine Mother is going to do some great things through this body. I have to stay here and protect it. He got the desire. Divine Mother planned everything. He was an expert and adept in that field. He looked after that body for 6 months, and after that, he was gone. So everything was done by Divine Mother.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh. Any other questions?
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om, Kolan Chetty, please tell.
Very interesting, Swamiji. From yesterday to today, the
Yeah.
session was very clear that nothing can be attained without the grace of God.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little further on this? What I think it is Brahma Satya Jagan Nitya.
Yeah.
God alone exists; all others are unreal.
Yeah.
This is a situation when Sri Ramakrishna was ill and did not want to get himself cured, but he went and asked the mother if but he never asked to be cured. He only asked to be if he could eat a little.
Yeah.
He never asked that the disease to be removed. He only asked that he must eat a little.
Yeah. So now Ramakrishna asked that I want to eat a little means cure my disease. That is the intention. See, suppose I'm sitting in the row while we are taking food. So many people are taking food. I want to eat some sweet now. The person who was serving sweet has gone away. Now I cannot shout at him, come back, I want sweet. So you will feel ashamed. So what will you tell? See, bring that sweet to the next person here. He wants it. Please, can you bring it? So when he brings that sweet to him, we'll tell, oh, have anyhow you bought, you also put me a little. So we don't directly tell that, come, I want to eat it. So Ramakrishna's intention here of that I want to eat food a little means cure the disease, that's all. So reading between the lines. So mother had some higher plan that by bringing in the disease, and also you should see that Ramakrishna as an avatara would absorb the sins of the people who used to come near him. Whoever used to go to Sri Ramakrishna, they would have a change in their attitude and also growth in spiritual life. And also they will go forward and they will prosper, everything, whatever they wanted, they used to go forward according to your things. So what is the thing that which is not allowing us to go forward in spiritual life? It is the sins which we have committed in earlier lives or in this life. That heaviness, that bhoja, or that weight, vajan, is pulling us back, not us allowing us to go forward. So anybody coming to Sri Ramakrishna, the great avatara, he would absorb their sins. And where will that sins go? He has to have that and he has to undergo it. So that's what he was undergoing in that form and relieving all the other people of that so that they can move forward spiritually. Just like the mother in the house, you can see the baby will have the disease, it will shit there on the cloth, it will urinate, it will do everything. She will not, what you call, feel anything bad. She will take all the pain. She will get up all the whole night and look after the child. So her love to the child is showed through bearing all the pains and everything difficulties for the sake of the child. Likewise, like the universal mother, like the universal father, Sri Ramakrishna is taking away all the pain of all other people. So, and he is undergoing that pain and relieving all the other people to go forward in spiritual life. So, Divine Mother had done that arrangement so that through the disease, she wanted to unite all the direct disciples, those who would become the sannyasins in future, and all the householder disciples come together, have a common platform to serve him and bring in the beginning of a great organization called Ramakrishna Sangha. For that, Divine Mother was making all these plans through that disease, so that all the people can come together and serve him. With that common thing, the new organization was being built. So for that, that was necessary. Divine Mother planned and used that, even that disease, for the welfare of the world. That's all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yes, Kolan Shetty. Any other questions? Any other doubts? Okay, then I shall end the session with a prayer. Om Priyataam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Prenite Prenitam Jagat Harihi Om Tatsat Shri Ramakrishna Pranamastu